Governor Burgum. Doug Burgum, are you there, sir?
I sure am, Morgan, and so great to be with you on the Hugh Hewitt Show. And boy, I was thrilled to be with you at the National Security Forum last week in Iowa. You did such a fantastic job moderating that panel with Senator Ernst, and your knowledge and depth of this. It's just, I tell you, as a governor, as a candidate, talking to someone like you that actually understands what's going on in the world is a real joy.
Well, thank you so much, Governor. I love being in New Hampshire with you on Friday. We're seeing much of you on the campaign trail. You know, I told you one of the things that I was so impressed about in that very first debate is that it wasn't the former, foreign policy people, ambassadors or other people on the stage that brought up China. It was you, the governor. So tell us, we are spending a lot of our morning talking about the Middle East, talking about Israel, as we should. But Governor, I am watching overnight the pictures and the videos and the images of Putin and Xi Jinping in China at the Belt and Road Conference, smiling, grinning, laughing, and basically mocking the West. What should our viewers know about what Putin and Xi Jinping are up to?
Well, this is a dangerous combination, and then you throw in their connections with Iran and North Korea, and they're basically trying to establish a new world order. And the new world order does not include a new world order that's about democracy and liberty and freedom and U.S. leadership. This whole Belt and Road summit that they're having, they have 150 countries that showed up. And when you just put China and Russia together, you take China's $1 trillion of loans, and then you take Russia's oil powerhouse exports that there is, China's gas station. The two of them, of course, it's appealing for all these developing countries to come together. And Putin and Xi spent 3 hours together. They're like locked at the hip at this conference, right. And he's being treated. Putin is being treated like a mob boss that kills his enemy. He's being treated as the guest of honor at this global summit by Xi.
Yeah, it's interesting. I often remind people, Governor, that Putin and Xi Jinping have met with each other over the past decade more times than they have met with any other world leaders. This is clearly a bromance, so to speak. But one of the things, staying on the scene, one of the things that you talked about in New Hampshire last Friday that I thought was so poignant, and I'd love for you to expand upon this, is and I know a lot of our viewers have listened to this, is that the ability of the Chinese to buy up American farmland and what you have done in North Dakota to stop it. Can you just expand on that issue a bit more?
Well, happy to, because in North Dakota we've got among the strongest, not just anti-foreign country ownership. If you're a U.S. corporation, if you cannot buy farmland in North Dakota. If you are two unrelated U.S. citizens that want to form a little company and come in North Dakota, you can't buy it. It's got to be owned by family members together is how we manage farmland. And so this is something that, again, you can't have national security without border security, and you can't have national security without energy security, and you can't have national security without food security. And so this is something that we just have to make sure that we're stopping the Chinese from these investments of our land and our food resources, including the production of resources downstream from that farmland.
One of the things that that we talked about on Friday, but that you've talked about at length, and listen, I hope whether you are the president or whether you are, whatever you do, governor, whatever you do, you would be such a good national leader on this issue. And that's the issue of our supply chains, of our manufacturing abilities or lack thereof, especially as it relates to the defense industrial base. And we seem it seems impossible for us, Governor, to produce the munitions that we need, to produce the ships that we need, to produce the military hardware, the subs that we need in a timely manner. How in the world do we fix this? I mean, we've got war breaking out all around the world and we can't build anything.
Well, absolutely, Morgan. And this is why we just say when I look up and down the debate stage and I realize that I've created more jobs than every other candidate on the stage combined, not one of them, but all combined, and have spent over 30 plus years leading and building and creating businesses in the private sector, and then working with people that sell technology to everybody, including the defense technology companies. So I've worked with all of them as customers, and we have got such a catharsis in the federal government with the procurement process and with the rulemaking and with the lobbyists. I mean, we've had like 40% of the defense contractors that are small in size have gone out of business in the last decade because it keeps favoring the large manufacturers. We have a defense budget that's going to get crushed because of our weak economy and our high debt. Our debt's the interest on the U.S. debt will now soon surpass what we spend on defense. And what we spend on defense, only 15% of it goes to procurement. And then when we procure stuff, it takes years or decades. And so we've got to cut the red tape the way we've done that in my state. Go through and just cut. We passed 51 more red tape reduction bills this last year. We've got to speed up our ability to respond. And if we tell Taiwan we'll get you Harpoon missiles in 2029 instead of yesterday, that gives Xi 4 years to go in and blockade or invade that island. We've got to be faster in what we do as a country.
Governor, is it fixable at the federal level? Like, I understand that it's fixable at the state level, what you've done, but it seems like so many members of Congress that I know and respect have tried to tackle this issue, and nobody makes a dent in it.
Well, part of it is we've got a whole set of leaders in Washington, D.C. that don't trust markets. They think that federal one-size-fits-all rules for everything, whether it's environmental issues, whether it's manufacturing, whether it's competition. And I came from an industry in technology and software where it was wide open. There was no tariffs, there was no subsidies. It was raw competition. And guess what? U.S. led the world. American, if you give us an open playing field and let entrepreneurs and innovators roll on this stuff, that's how we're going to win. Innovation is how we win the Cold War with China. It's how we win the proxy war we're in with Russia and now with Iran. And those are things we have to do. But we've also got to stop this crazy stuff that Joe Biden is doing. You're talking about funding. He's funding both sides of the war in Ukraine, and he's funding both sides of the war that's happening in Israel because of the aid that's going to Iran and the lifting of the sanctions on countries like Venezuela and Iran on oil exports is funding both sides of these conflicts.
Governor, when I was in the federal government in the Trump administration, one of my biggest frustrations is I did not have the ability really to hire and fire, somewhat on the hiring side, but I could move people out of my office. It was hard to do so, but there is no accountability in the federal workforce. How do we tackle that?
Well, we have to change that, and now is the ideal time. We've got to stop this protectionism of jobs that we have on the government side, particularly when we have 10 million jobs open in this economy. If someone rolls out of the federal government and goes back to the private sector, that's good for taxpayers. It's good for the deficit. It's good for all kinds of things, and it's good for our country. And we have so much. Again, in inside of every federal job, there's at least 20% of what every one of those jobs includes is some mind-numbing, soul-sucking work that even the federal employees don't want to do because it doesn't have any value. We got to start treating the taxpayers like customers, and then we have to design jobs and work that has meaning, and then we have to go get to work getting it done. And this is why in our state, I cut 27% out of the general fund. That not slowed the growth of spending, actually cut spending. And then all the trains still left on time because we're able to do things more efficiently. We're 30 years behind on technology in every aspect of government. I mean, the basic stuff that any even small business would do, we're still running paper around in the federal government, including down at the southern border. They're processing paper down there.
Yeah. Governor, I love hearing you talk. I could hear you talk about these issues for hours. I wish that we had hundreds of people like you in the Congress, in the federal workforce that understand business. But going back to Israel and that conflict right now, we saw that as President Biden was basically, as he was boarding Air Force One yesterday to go to Israel, the King of Jordan, leaders in Egypt and around the Middle East, cancel his meeting as he's walking up the stairs to Air Force One. You're running for president. Why do you think people who take billions of dollars from us, by the way, in economic and military aid, why do they feel emboldened to cancel on the president last minute?
Well, I think it's just a function of how much respect we've lost as a country. When we project weakness, we get conflict. And whether it's pulling out of Afghanistan, whether it's, again, helping Iran get closer to nuclear weapons, lots of people are not happy with it around the world. And then, of course, Joe Biden's got his own issues because his own party, is protesting at the Capitol yesterday on the side of the terrorists. And so if they're looking at that and going, well, his own party is disrespecting him, then why do we care about all this? And meanwhile, we've probably got officials that are in China today meeting with Xi and Putin, lining up to get their resources. And so, again, we're competing for who's going to be in charge in the world. And right now, we've got someone, instead of strength through, peace through strength, we're getting conflict through weakness. What Joe Biden is doing is actually creating some of the wars that we're in, is the weakness that we have on economy, energy, and national security is what's triggering these activities.
Well, we have, my friends, ladies and gentlemen, Governor Doug Burgum understands business, understands how to run a state, understands foreign policy just as much as anybody, if not more, on that debate stage. Governor, it's an honor to have you.